to you from the state of New York, where we have a statewide ban on fracking. We achieved that. We slew the fracking Goliath by creating a slingshot made out of science and grassroots political power. And as a scientist, my role in this great opera was to work with my other medical professionals and fellow scientists in creating a document with the very unsexy title, The Compendium of Scientific, Medical, and Media Findings Demonstrating the Risks and Harms of Fracking and Unconventional Gas and Oil Extraction. So I hold it up so you can see how big it is. There are now more than 900 studies that have looked at the harms of fracking to public health and to our climate, and the vast majority of them, 90%, show in fact there are harms, or that those harms are almost very potentially real. So this is the size of a telephone book for those of you old enough to remember what those look like. And we sent this to our governor, we sent it to our health commissioner and our environmental commissioner. We also took this data out to the people and gave lecture after lecture in church basements and town halls and libraries across the state. And what we learned was that the more that people knew about fracking, the more opposed they were. Along the way, as we compiled the peer-reviewed scientific literature, we began to notice something. We began to notice that a lot of the evidence for harm actually came here in California. And in our most recent issue, the most recent edition, the 4th edition, and you can find this as a free download on our website, concernedhealthny.org, for the copy of the compendium, concernedhealthny.org. We have a special section in this latest edition about California, because the situation here is so dire. California, as we learned, is the only state that allows fracking waste to be held in open, unlined pits. And there are no setback regulations for oil drilling in California. This state does not limit how close drilling and fracking operations can be from homes, schools, and daycare centers and health centers. And there are 3 areas that we highlight for special concern and here in California in this latest compendium. One is in Kern County, a top producer of the nation's food supply, which has the highest density of fracking operations in the state. This means that we are projecting the impact of all these risks onto the whole nation. We know that Chevron in 2015 diverted 21 million gallons of wastewater to irrigate California's crops.
The halos!
Exactly. We know that in the Los Angeles basin, an oil field is located directly underneath one of the most populous cities in the world. 1.7 million people in LA live within a mile of an active oil or gas well. And then we looked more deeply at those data, and what we discovered was that the resulting public health threats do not affect all Californians equally. Poor communities and communities of color are disproportionately affected. Who are the people living within a quarter mile of an oil well here in California? Well, 90% of those folks are people of color. So you have an environmental injustice problem here in California, and we health professionals wrote about that as well. In other words, the crude oil that continues to be drilled out of the bedrock of California is matched only by the gusher of oil money from the industry that's flowing into Sacramento. That's the only way to explain the severity of the situation here. The result is a dangerous drilling practices in urban areas that poison the air that children breathe. The result of all this oil money flowing into Sacramento is unlined pits full of fracking waste that threaten the water that Californians drink. And the result of all this oil money flowing to Sacramento is the unregulated use of drilling wastewater to irrigate crops that we all eat. We have good data on all these public health harms, but there's no one's taking action on this evidence here in California, and to take action would require shutting off the flow of cash from big oil to the governor's mansion and to the State House. activist that you can listen to here in California, David Braun. Many years ago, I was a postdoc, and I was working on my first book on environmental health, and I lived in Boston. And on Saturday mornings, I sat out on my balcony. I lived in this third floor walk-up, and it was on top of a very steep hill. And I would always wait for the weekly arrival of a guy I called Smoking Bike Guy, who was out for his weekend ride. Smoking Bike Guy was a hairy man with bulging thighs and calves. He was clad in bright spandex, and his feet were attached by those funny shoes to his titanium pedals and a tricked-out Tour de France-style bicycle. And as the slope became more and more vertical, he bore down hard. He was clicking faster and faster through his 21 gears. And that's about the time that an interesting, incongruous detail came into view. Beneath the visor of his sleek aerodynamic helmet, clenched between his teeth, was a lit cigarette. He was puffing and pumping in synchrony. Smoking Bike Guy left a plume of tobacco smoke in his wake as he crested the hill and flew down the other side in all of his spandex glory. It was like a rolling demonstration of that children's quiz game, which of these things don't belong with the other. When it comes to energy, California is the Smoking Bike Guy, and that has to change, folks. When you look past the athletic costume, look past the fancy gear, look past California's solar panels and the lofty rhetoric coming from the governor here, who wears a mantle of climate leader, and what you find are practices and habits that belie, contradict, and cancel out the self-perception of health and virtue. California remains the third largest oil producer in the nation. Only Texas and North Dakota pull more oil out of its bedrock than California. But because you ride a bicycle instead of a pickup truck, that isn't part of your self-perception. But we need to look at the cigarette clenched between the teeth of the energy industry here in California, and you Democrats need to say, that's going to change. The science is behind